Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Cyberpunk 2077 on PS5. This is going to be a bit of an unusual review. Most people love a comeback story, unless you're me, who has found more truth in life in first impressions, rather than wasting my time giving something shit a chance. But I have no nostalgia for the hype surrounding this game's original release, and understand this very clearly. Hype sold this title, mostly based on the strength of a completely different game. But I had no real concept of what this was supposed to be, so I'm free to make my own opinions instead of having to conform to or rail against the moronic opinion of some kind of industry insider or professional reviewer. Ready, chooms? Let's get into my own opinion of 2020's Cyberpunk 2077 with the Phantom Liberty update. Now, this is also a first for the show. For the run of Deleted Saves, I've talked about a bunch of games based either on the Dungeons & Dragons or World of Darkness intellectual properties of tabletop role-playing games. Some listeners may be wondering where my reviews of games based on Warhammer 40k or Shadowrun are. Don't you worry, those will be addressed too. But Cyberpunk 2077 is based on the work of writer/creator Mike Pondsmith, and his Cyberpunk 2020 game setting first released through his R. Talsorian Games company in 1988. So this sort of distilled and gamified version of the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction has been around for some time. And while we have had cyberpunk games before, this is the first time we are using Mr. Pondsmith's work specifically. The concept for Cyberpunk 2077 began its development back in 2012 by Polish developer CD Projekt Red, who first sent the initial concept of what the game would look like along with a copy of The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings to Mr. Pondsmith to see what he thought. Pondsmith was very impressed, and the two reached an agreement where he would license the Cyberpunk universe to CD Projekt for the year 2077 onward, and Pondsmith would retain the rights to everything that happened between the years 2020 and 2077. And I mean in game terms, not real world terms. And yes, we started getting sizzle reels of Cyberpunk 2077 in 2013. Who can forget the YouTube reels showing us a humanoid China doll with scythe-like arm blades caught mid-attack on some sort of pile of meat that was once human, while heavily armed militarized future cops shoot the absolute shit out of her, where the bullets do little more than damage her makeup. The game world collectively destroyed their already stretched to capacity denim jeans with just about every bodily fluid and solid you can think of in response, and the buzz was afoot. It only ramped up in intensity with the success of CD Projekt's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which I have already reviewed to, well, it's pretty cool, I guess, but it's not exactly interested in finishing this monster of a time sink game fanfare. The digital tits were a nice touch, boys, but that's not enough to keep me hanging, and the melodrama certainly wasn't. But were it not for The Witcher 3, I'm absolutely certain we wouldn't have Cyberpunk 2077. The problem is, despite all the sizzle reels, the game didn't actually go into full production until 2016, when we were already approaching Duke Nukem Forever levels of development hell. And with the ambition the studio planned for this title, 4 years from full start to release was simply not enough time. But when fans were beginning to turn sour on the property, and games journalists were beginning to dust off their old shitty dad jokes about games that took forever to come out, see the previously mentioned Duke Nukem, the last years of ridiculous crunch at CD Projekt Red forced Cyberpunk 2077 out the door a little prematurely. And having released during the 2020 COVID pandemic, a lot of people had a lot of time to spend on this title. And holy shit, did things go wrong for CD Projekt in this title. Players across all consoles and PC began to flood the developer with complaints about game-breaking bugs of every sort, basically rendering the game unplayable for a host of reasons. I'm sure many of us remember them for those who tried to play it back in 2020 when it first debuted. To the point that Sony itself had the game pulled from its storefront until it was fixed, and investigations of the company and class action lawsuits began to swirl around the developer like a gathering hurricane. The game even caused a Game Informer reviewer to suffer a grand mal seizure. For those of you who don't know, those are the really bad ones you have if you have epilepsy. That caused the developer to reach out to her personally, and eventually having to issue seizure warnings for the game and to patch the sequence down to not trigger photosensitive players. It turned out that Cyberpunk 2077 was bad. I mean, a truly broken mess. And no one at all who has active brain cells or weren't cashing a paycheck from CD Projekt argues that. To give you an idea, a buddy of mine bought a copy and played it, but eventually had to get a refund because he could not complete a major story mission because the area of the game that he had to be in for it was suffering a permanent torrential rain of motorcycles. I admit, that's pretty damn funny. So time rolled on. Gamers got obsessed with other things, and CD Projekt went back to quietly fixing the mess they left. 4 years later, they released what could arguably be called the definitive edition of Cyberpunk 2077, with tons of bug fixes and system updates, along with a huge DLC pack called Phantom Liberty. This is at the point in which I decided to pull the trigger and buy the thing. So what has happened, and what do I think of the final product? As is tradition, let me give you a quick rundown of the plot of Cyberpunk 2077, or at least the plot so far as I have experienced it. You play as V, just V, a man or woman or non-binary or trans person or other LGBTQIA plus person of your choice living in the year 2077 in the free city of Night City, an independent free state centered in California, somewhere between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Decades after a number of global and civil wars freed Night City to be a capitalist utopia on the west coast of what's left of the United States. This is a world where the USSR never dissolved, and Japan became a superpower to rival the traditional superpowers. And much of life in Night City is an odd and culturally insensitive version of hybrid Japanese and American cultures. Kind of like what most Americans who have never been to Japan think of it. A hybrid of extreme racism and post-World War II, we nuked your ass twice, American hoorah bluster, and a simultaneous fear of the old yellow peril, where Japanese people are all hyper-intelligent and business-savvy and possessed of an almost pulp novel-era Asian mysteriousness, with a people and culture that would crush us in a second, while at the same time fantasizing about samurai and waifus because anime is all we know. So fuck everybody who are in both or all of those camps, including if you do happen to believe that you are superior because of your Asian heritage. Racism is bad, kids, and everybody does it, so everybody is guilty. Anyway, Night City is a 24/7 neon-soaked fuckfest, where vending machines dispense burritos and wontons with equal ease. The cybernetically enhanced penises and smart guns are all the same size, bigger the better, baby. And you can't walk 2 feet without accidentally motorboating some woman's boobs, only to take a mantis blade to the neck as a reflexive action. Oh, and crime is rampant, and it's as likely as not that you'll be the victim of gang violence, while an apathetic police force looks on. Hell, they might help the gangbangers rob and rape you. All set to the tone of whoever dies with the most cash and toys wins. This is not a setting you take seriously, nor is it a great setting to tell deep cultural stories around because those sorts of stories assume that somehow there will be a redemption arc and that the world can change for the better. Night City is a world where everyone wants to be, but everyone is miserable, and the heroes are all professional murderers. The time and place for redemption or salvation has long passed, and all you are doing is paying big Eurodollars to survive for as long as you can in the aftermath. Anyway, V, whatever of the restarting foundations for them takes, quickly finds themselves cast out of their society and thrust into the role of mercenary, followed along by your friend Jackie Wells, who talks big and has big dreams and is a good dude and is certain to die young. Well, that one job that is too good to be true comes along, and you raid the headquarters of the biggest corporation around, the Arasaka Corporation, and steal a chip holding an unknown data source. Of course, things go badly. You witness the death of the head of the corporation at the hands of his son, and you and Jackie must fight your way out of the tower in a gun battle reminiscent of the movie Heat, where Jackie does indeed die, and you shove the special chip into your head-mounted USB socket, only to find out the chip is holding the personality and last memories of an old dead rock star by the name of Johnny Silverhand. Johnny Silverhand, a staple of the original Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop setting, and in this game is played by Keanu Reeves. The game story itself is a sort of follow-up to the most well-known of the adventure scenarios for the Cyberpunk 2020 setting, titled Never Fade Away, in which Silverhand decides to take down Arasaka. That's fucking right, folks. The whole rest of Cyberpunk 2077 becomes an escort quest where you are followed around by the ghost of John Wick, or John Constantine, or Johnny Mnemonic, or Jack Traven, or Neo, or Johnny Utah, or Ted Theodore Logan, because that's how I recall first seeing Keanu Reeves in his long movie career. Christ, he's played a lot of guys named John. More correctly, you are followed around by a program that is overriding V's brain, as the chip uploaded a virus that sees V's brain as one big cancer that has to be fixed. So in order to save V's life, they have to get rid of Silverhand as fast as possible by taking on every side quest in Night City. So that is where I found myself pretty quick in Cyberpunk 2077, playing detective, trying to solve my own ongoing slow murder. Cyberpunk itself relies heavily not only on the work of Mike Pondsmith, but also upon the designs of futurist architects Dieter Rams and Sid Mead. It also pulls heavily as possible from the movie Blade Runner, which CD Projekt went on record as being the Bible for all things cyberpunk. They also took notes from other cultural sources and touchstones, such as Ghost in the Shell, Akira, System Shock, Deus Ex, and Mad Max Fury Road. Yet the final product is really none of these things. CD Projekt tried to push the narrative that this is a choices matter role-playing game. It is not. In fact, it is far from a role-playing game. If you come to Cyberpunk 2077 expecting an Ultima, or a Baldur's Gate, or Divinity, or Dragon Age Origins, or hell, even a Morrowind or Oblivion, you will be sorely disappointed. Cyberpunk 2077 is about as RPG-inspired as the Borderlands games are, with possible action paths available to your health and shooting upgrades at each level gained. If anything, Cyberpunk 2077 is Grand Theft Auto, the far future, as it plays just like a first-person GTA 5. I repeat, Cyberpunk 2077 is not a role-playing game. What it is a story-driven crime simulator with technological upgrades for money. And yet, I kind of found myself having fun with it, once I knew what I was dealing with. This is also not a deep game. This is a turn your brain off and have fun kind of game. It is trying to deal with deep subjects like transhumanism and what it means to be you when a computer program can wipe out who you are and replace you with another personality, like we would change operating systems on a blank motherboard, and the corruption that comes with unfettered, unregulated capitalism, and how it wrecks everything it touches with its necrotic fingers. But it does so shallowly, and with such candy-colored bombast, while drowning the player in cartoon tits and bullet casings, that what it is trying to say is lost in the static. It's hard for me to take the game seriously in what it has to say when I have to take YouTube star Jesse Cox to a cyber surgeon before his cock explodes due to bad surgery, Or YouTube star Co Carnage is street preaching along the way. Or another YouTube star, Susie the Sphere Hunter, is just like there, I guess, being edgy. And every 10 goddamn minutes, Keanu Reeves is in my ear saying fuck, when I keep expecting him to say be excellent to each other. Worse, the Phantom Liberty expansion turns your V into a cybernetic James Bond, and comes complete with Idris Elba. So now I have two major Hollywood stars in my silly-ass future sci-fi crime simulation game. Like I said, it is not the game CD Projekt proposed or claimed. It's not even deep. It's as shallow as a mud puddle, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. It is a great game to not take seriously and turn yourself into a metal monster while you looter shooter your way across the near future cyber city, gaining quote unquote levels with ridiculous ease and changing your guns like most people change their underwear. I barely touched the main story and I'm already ludicrously wealthy, owning multiple properties in cyberware and the best guns I can get at this stage. But all the cars are fuck ugly, so I refuse to buy any of them when public transport is free. But I've already got 3 vehicles for free as part of the main plot, so there's literally no reason to spend your money on them, or even drive anywhere. The whole thing's pointless, but in a silly way. The game is basically Spaceballs the video game, but with better guns and naked people if you so choose. While I don't think the studio behind the Witcher series was aiming for, but it is what they made. And to be honest, dear listeners, my interest in completing this game has already waned. I'm not saying I regret the money I spent to buy the game, but it certainly isn't keeping my attention as the story goes on. There's just too much. Too much city, too much light, too much shit and ambient noise and stuff popping off all over the map. Too much existent ethnic slurs on all sides, which sadly is very much a part of the nature of the cyberpunk subgenre, reducing entire cultures and human beings down to sight gags and sound bites that fit a narrative. And yes, I understand that is part of the self-parody narrative of this brand of futurism, which coming from the fact that Mr. Pondsmith himself, a black man who was able to break into the tabletop RPG space, is probably too aware of, allowed his product to be used in this way. Like the setup for a joke for a stand-up comic that usually starts out with something like, white people be like this, but black people be like this. Or something that would have come out of the mouth of Bill Burr or Joe Rogan or anyone that has ever been on the stage of Def Comedy Jam, is just too much after a while. I'm sure lots of people would say that wasn't supposed to be the takeaway, but it was, folks. It was, and stop denying it. Yes, Mr. Pondsmith himself did clear and did give the okay on the representations of the Haitian gangs or the White Voodoo Boys gang. But to me, a slur is still a slur, no matter who is okay with it. We see too often in the real world where some groups are more okay with slurs than others, but it's still wrong for everyone. Maybe that's just me and you can disagree. I know that this is my opinion. What's the big deal, you may be thinking? But to me, this shows why racism will never truly be solved, and why we'll never be able to work together as a united society. Too many people want this sort of racist shorthand for others. You want a society where everyone works together? Then this shit has to stop. Overall, though, the game is just too much crap stuck into a blender and spun out onto my screen when I am starting to look at other games the way one would look at a vapid first date while you're trying to think of a way to get out of this gracefully. In a way, it is very much like The Witcher 3, which I also found myself just unable to finish because I just have other shit to do, man. Maybe that is just my legacy with CD Projekt Red Studio games, full of a lot of interesting ideas and bits and pieces, but they need about 30 to 40 hours lopped off of them like a gangrenous limb to tell tighter stories in a shorter time. Good on them to have had the money to hire all these famous folks, but it didn't help the games any. They aren't bad, just way too much, and I just don't want to deal with it. I'm also beginning to think that perhaps the world would have been better off had Cyberpunk 2077 just never come out at all. That it had stayed a tabletop game in a series of disjointed novels and movies about a dire capitalist future with Japanese overtones in a ruined America where everyone is shit scared of their neighbors and would piss on your corpse and take your wallet just as soon as look at you. Lord knows, we really deserve a ruined America with someone else running it. We're 80% of the way there already. Maybe the developers should have skipped this one and done on and gone to make a Witcher 4 or whatever. Yet I find myself conflicted. It's not horrible. I'd play more of it. My V is cute and snarky. I made sure she was. But it's an avatar, a toy, a cartoon character I don't feel connected to. That is probably the most cyberpunk thing of the whole game. The use of a digital second skin that you are pantomiming through for money with no real ground under its feet. I can't even give you a good Metacritic score because it is all over the place, but far less than a must play. More like their generally positive banner after 4 years of fixes. And that really is pretty damning. And I couldn't give a fuck less what the critics have to say. Their words about as bloated as this game. At the end of the day, Cyberpunk 2077 is just a game. It's kind of a dull game in an overblown way. It's misascribed to the genre it was claimed to be, but no one really cares about that. It exists, people bought it, good and bad happen around it. It got way more press than it should have, but it made good money for its developer. It's a thing that exists, and now I've had my turn with it. And the most punk thing here is that it will be forgotten soon enough, and I'll probably drop it long before it completes its star-studded story. It's not never fade away. It's more like you can't help but fade away. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orden Wells, and Mass Lama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.